The cafeteria fell silent as the slap landed, hard. Hot sauce dripped from Amara's hair onto her ruined blouse, as Danica Hayes smirked, flicking the empty packet aside. Oops! Guess trash doesn't belong at Crestwood. The crowd held its breath, waiting for tears, for flinching, for the new girl to crumble. But Amara just wiped her face slowly, her dark eyes burning with something dangerous. "You're right," she said, her voice deathly calm. "I don't belong here." A whisper rippled through the room as she leaned closer. "Because while you were playing Queen Bee, you missed one crucial detail. I'm the girlfriend of the President of the United States, and you just declared war on the wrong person. Something will happen next in this story that you would have never imagined." From which country are you enjoying this dramatic tale? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe now, because this revenge story is just getting started.
The morning air was crisp as Amara stepped off the bus, her worn sneakers hitting the pavement with quiet finality. Crestwood High loomed before her, a sprawling brick building that seemed to breathe with the energy of hundreds of students already filling its halls. She adjusted the strap of her backpack, feeling the weight of her textbooks dig into her shoulder. It was just another school. Just another place to survive until graduation. The whispers started before she even reached the front steps. "Who's that? New girl, I guess. Look at those shoes. Thrift store special." Amara kept her eyes forward, her expression carefully blank. She'd heard it all before at her last school, and the one before that. Moving constantly meant she'd learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to make herself small enough that bullies lost interest. But something about Crestwood felt different. The energy here was sharper, more predatory. She found the main office without trouble, her paperwork already prepared and neatly organized in a folder. The secretary barely glanced up as she took it, flipping through the pages with disinterest. "Johnson, huh? Transfer from Jefferson High." Amara nodded. The woman sighed, stamping a form with unnecessary force. "Homerooms 214. Second floor. Don't be late." The dismissal was clear. Amara took her schedule and turned toward the door, only to nearly collide with someone standing just behind her. "Oops. Didn't see you there." The voice was honey-sweet, dripping with false concern. Amara looked up into the carefully made-up face of a blonde girl, her cheerleading uniform hugging her frame perfectly. Behind her, two other girls smirked, their eyes raking over Amara's second-hand clothes with obvious disdain. Amara stepped aside without a word. The blonde's smile didn't waver. "I'm Danica. You must be new." A statement, not a question. Amara met her gaze evenly. "Yeah." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken challenge. Danica's eyes narrowed slightly, her head tilting like a bird examining something potentially dangerous. Then the bell rang, shattering the moment. "Better run along," Danica said, her smile turning sharp. "Wouldn't want you to be late on your first day." Amara walked away without responding, but she could feel their eyes burning into her back all the way down the hall. Room 214 was already half full when she arrived. The teacher, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and tired eyes, barely glanced up from his desk as she handed him her transfer slip. "Johnson, take any empty seat." Amara chose one near the back, away from the windows. The chatter in the room dipped slightly as she passed, curious eyes following her progress. She kept her shoulders straight, her gaze fixed ahead. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her uncomfortable. The seat beside her remained empty until just before the final bell, when Danica swept in with her two friends in tow. Amara didn't react when the blonde deliberately bumped her desk as she passed, nor when she heard the whispered, "Clumsy me," that followed. Class began with roll call. Amara tuned it out, focusing instead on memorizing the layout of the room, the exits, the faces of her classmates. Survival meant knowing your environment. "Amara Johnson? Here." A few heads turned at the sound of her voice. Danica smirked, whispering something to the girl beside her that made them both giggle. Amara ignored them, turning her attention to the teacher as he began his lecture. The hour passed slowly. Amara took careful notes, aware of the occasional paper ball that landed near her desk, the stifled laughter that followed. When the bell finally rang, she was the first to stand, gathering her things with quick efficiency. Hey, new girl. Danica blocked her path to the door, her friends flanking her like bodyguards. You're pretty quiet, huh? Nothing to say. Amara adjusted her grip on her backpack. I save my words for people worth talking to. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Danica's smile faltered for just a second before returning, brighter and more dangerous than before. Cute. Real cute. She stepped closer, close enough that Amara could smell her expensive perfume. You're going to regret that. Amara met her gaze without flinching. I don't think so. For a long moment, they stood locked in silent battle. Then Danica laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. We'll see. She stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. After you. Amara walked past without another word, but she could feel the weight of their stares following her down the hall. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of unfamiliar classrooms and half-hearted introductions. Amara kept to herself, speaking only when called upon, her answers short and to the point. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown louder, the stares more obvious. The cafeteria was a nightmare of noise and movement. Amara grabbed a tray and went through the line mechanically, choosing the simplest options available. She scanned the room briefly before heading for an empty table near the back, well away from the loudest groups. She'd barely taken 2 bites when the chair across from her screeched back. Danica dropped into it with practiced grace, her tray laden with food she clearly had no intention of eating. Her friends took the seats on either side, boxing Amara in. Mind if we join you? Danica asked, already unwrapping her straw. You looked lonely. Amara set her fork down carefully. I prefer it. Danica's smile didn't reach her eyes. That's no way to make friends. I'm not here to make friends. The blonde's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her soda can. Then why are you here? Amara met her gaze evenly. To graduate. A beat of silence. Then Danica laughed, the sound bright and artificial. Well, aren't you just a little ray of sunshine? She took a delicate sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving Amara's face. Tell me, Amara, what's your story? No story. Everyone has a story. Danica leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Come on, just between us girls. What brings you to our humble little school? Amara held her stare. Family moved. Aha. Danica's gaze flicked over Amara's worn sweater, her second-hand jeans. Must be hard starting over. Amara didn't rise to the bait. She took another bite of her food, chewing slowly. The silence stretched, growing heavier by the second. Danica's smile tightened. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached for her tray. Oops. The word was barely out of her mouth before her entire lunch appended onto Amara's lap. The cafeteria erupted in gasps and laughter. Amara looked down at the mess slowly soaking into her jeans. The cold shock of soda, the sticky smear of ketchup. She could feel every eye in the room on her, waiting for her reaction. Danica pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with fake concern. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. How clumsy of me. Amara took a deep breath. Then another. She could feel the anger rising, hot and sharp, but she forced it down. Reacting was what they wanted. She stood slowly, the ruined food sliding to the floor with a wet splat. The room fell silent again, watching. Danica smirked up at her. What are you going to do, cry? Amara leaned down, close enough that only Danica could hear her next words. You think this is my first time dealing with someone like you? Her voice was low, deadly calm. You're not special. You're not original. You're just another spoiled brat who's never faced real consequences. Danica's smirk faltered. Amara straightened, her face carefully blank once more. Without another word, she turned and walked away, the whispers rising behind her like a tide. The bathroom was empty when she pushed through the door. Amara locked herself in the farthest stall, stripping off her ruined jeans with shaking hands. The spare leggings in her backpack were thin, but they'd have to do. She changed quickly, shoving the stained clothing into a plastic bag. The mirror showed her reflection pale but composed, her dark eyes burning with quiet fury. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One new message. She unlocked it with numb fingers. Asterisk. Everything okay? Asterisk. Amara stared at the screen for a long moment before typing her reply. Asterisk. Just the usual. Asterisk. The response was immediate. Do you want me to? Asterisk. No. Asterisk. She cut him off before he could finish. Asterisk. I can handle it. Asterisk. A pause. Then. Asterisk. I know you can. But you shouldn't have to. Asterisk. Amara exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the mirror. She typed one last message before shoving the phone back into her pocket. Asterisk. She'll learn. Asterisk. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Teachers either didn't notice or didn't care about her changed clothes. The whispers followed her from class to class, but no one dared approach her again. Danica and her friends were conspicuously absent from their usual haunts. Amara didn't let herself wonder why. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Amara gathered her things slowly, in no hurry to join the rush for the exits. She was nearly to the front doors when a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her into an empty classroom. Danica stood before her face flushed with anger. Who the hell do you think you are? Amara didn't answer. The blonde stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You embarrassed me today. You embarrassed yourself. Danica's hand shot out, shoving Amara back against the wall. Listen here, you little bitch. I run this school. You're nothing. Nobody. And by the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never set foot in Crestwood. Amara didn't flinch. Is that supposed to scare me? It's a promise. Danica leaned in, her breath hot against Amara's face. You're going to regret crossing me. Amara held her gaze, her voice eerily calm. No. You're going to regret touching me. For the first time, something like uncertainty flickered in Danica's eyes. She stepped back, her bravado slipping. Whatever. This isn't over. She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Amara waited until the sound of her footsteps faded before pulling out her phone. One text. Asterisk. Change of plans. Asterisk. The reply came instantly. Asterisk. Tell me what you need. Asterisk. Amara smiled for the first time that day. Asterisk. Everything. Asterisk. The rain started just as Amara reached the bus stop. She hunched her shoulders against the downpour, her thin jacket doing little to ward off the chill. Around her, students laughed and shoved under umbrellas, their voices rising above the drumbeat of water on pavement. No one offered to share their shelter. Amara didn't expect them to. The bus was late. By the time it arrived, her curls were plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through. She boarded without a word, ignoring the snickers from the back seats. Her phone buzzed as the bus lurched into motion. Asterisk. Where are you? Asterisk. Amara typed one-handed, her fingers stiff with cold. Asterisk. On my way. Asterisk. Asterisk. Car will meet you at the usual stop. Asterisk. She tucked the phone away, watching the city blur past through rain-streaked windows. The usual stop was 3 blocks from their actual destination, a precaution she'd insisted on. The less people knew, the better. The bus emptied gradually as it wound through the neighborhood. By the time Amara reached her stop, she was the only one left. The black sedan idled at the curb, its windows tinted dark against prying eyes. Amara ducked inside without hesitation, the sudden warmth of the car's interior making her shiver. Rough day. The driver's voice was familiar, comforting. Amara leaned back against the leather seats, closing her eyes. You could say that. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving the bus stop behind. Amara didn't open her eyes again until she felt them turn onto the private drive, the gentle crunch of gravel beneath the tires. The house loomed ahead, all glass and sharp angles, lit up against the storm. Security cameras tracked their approach, the gate swinging open silently to admit them. The car hadn't even come to a complete stop before the front door flew open. Elijah stood framed in the doorway, his suit rumpled from what she knew had been another endless day of meetings. His dark eyes scanned her face anxiously, taking in her damp clothes, the tight set of her jaw. Amara stepped out of the car, the rain still falling in sheets around her. He met her halfway, his hands coming up to cradle her face. Tell me what happened. She leaned into his touch, the anger of the day finally cracking. Just school stuff. Elijah's thumb brushed her cheekbone, his voice dropping to that tone she'd only ever heard him use with her. Amara. She exhaled shakily. There's this girl. His expression darkened instantly. What did she do? Amara shook her head, pulling back slightly. Nothing I can't handle. Elijah studied her face for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. Okay. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steering her toward the house. Let's get you dry first. Then you can tell me everything. The warmth of the foyer enveloped them as they stepped inside. Amara barely had time to tow off her wet shoes before a flurry of movement announced the arrival of Elijah's head of security. Sir, the call from London. Can wait. Elijah didn't even glance over his shoulder as he guided Amara toward the stairs. Clear my schedule for the rest of the day. The agent hesitated. But the Prime Minister can reschedule. Amara bit her lip. Elijah, you don't have to. Yes, he said firmly, his hand tightening on her shoulder. I do. They left the sputtering agent behind, climbing the wide staircase in silence. Amara could feel the weight of the house around her, the quiet hum of security systems, the distant murmur of staff going about their duties. It had taken months for her to stop jumping at every unexpected sound. Elijah's bedroom was exactly as she remembered it. All clean lines and muted colors, the massive bed neatly made despite the hour. He crossed to the walk-in closet without a word, returning with an armful of clothes. Here. He thrust the bundle at her. Showers through there. Amara took the offered clothes, her fingers brushing against silk. These are yours. Elijah shrugged, already turning toward the door. They'll fit well enough. She caught his wrist before he could leave. Thank you. He paused, his expression softening. Always. The bathroom was all marble and chrome, the shower big enough for 3 people. Amara turned the water as hot as she could stand, letting the steam wash away the lingering chill of the day. By the time she emerged, wrapped in one of Elijah's 2 big hoodies and a pair of sweatpants rolled at the ankles, the bedroom was empty. A tray sat on the bedside table, tea, still steaming, and a plate of sandwiches. Amara smiled faintly. He always remembered. She found him in the study, pacing before the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the back gardens. The rain had eased to a drizzle, the setting sun painting the clouds in shades of gold and violet. Elijah turned at the sound of her footsteps, his phone still pressed to his ear. We'll discuss this tomorrow. He ended the call without waiting for a response, tossing the phone onto the couch. Feel better? Amara nodded, curling into one of the oversized armchairs. Yeah, thanks. Elijah dropped into the seat opposite her, his gaze intent. Now, tell me about this girl. Amara took a deep breath, and she told him everything. The silence stretched between them after Amara finished speaking. Elijah's expression had grown darker with every word, his fingers tightening around the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. You should have called me, he said finally, his voice low and controlled in a way that meant he was anything but calm. Amara shook her head, curling her legs beneath her on the chair. And what? Have you sent a team of Secret Service agents to scare some high school kids? If that's what it takes. Elijah. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze. I can handle Danica. That's not the point. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window before turning back. You shouldn't have to handle it. Not when. When what? Amara arched a brow. When I'm dating the president. That's exactly why I need to deal with this myself. The unspoken truth hung heavy between them. Elijah Carter wasn't just any boyfriend. He was the youngest president in U.S. history, elected at 35 after a meteoric political rise. And their relationship, the ultimate secret. Elijah dragged a hand through his hair, the carefully styled strands falling out of place. At least let me transfer you to a different school. Sidwell Friends has excellent security. No. Amara stood to meet him, placing her hands on his chest. We talked about this. I need to be somewhere normal. Somewhere no one would think to look for me. His heartbeat was rapid beneath her palms. This isn't normal, Amara. Being harassed? Having food thrown at you? It's high school. She tried to smile. Pretty standard stuff. Not for you. His hands came up to cover hers. Never for you. They stood like that for a long moment, the only sound the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. Outside, the last light of dusk faded into night. Finally, Elijah sighed. What do you want to do? Amara stepped back, crossing to the window. The gardens below were dark now, illuminated only by subtle pathway lights. I want to see how far she'll go. That's dangerous. It's strategic. She turned to face him. Danica thinks she's untouchable. Let her show her hand. When she crosses a real line, we'll have grounds to intervene without exposing you, Elijah finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. Amara nodded. Exactly. He studied her for a long moment before exhaling sharply. 1 week. If this escalates before then. It won't. If it escalates, he continued firmly, we reevaluate. Understood. Amara moved back into his space, rising on her toes to brush her lips against his. Understood, Mr. President. Elijah's arms came around her waist, pulling her close. You're going to be the death of me, Johnson. She smiled against his mouth. But what a way to go. Tuesday morning. The rain had stopped overnight, leaving the sidewalk slick and shining. Amara stepped off the bus with her headphones in, the hood of her sweatshirt pulled low over her face. The morning crowd parted around her instinctively, students rushing to beat the first bell. She felt the stares before she saw them. A group of girls clustered near the entrance, their laughter a little too loud, their eyes a little too bright. Danica held court at the center, her blonde hair cascading over one shoulder in perfect waves. Amara kept walking. Oops, incoming. A leg shot out suddenly, tripping her. Amara caught herself against the wall, her headphones clattering to the ground. Laughter erupted around her. Danica smirked, examining her nails. Better watch your step, new girl. Wouldn't want you to fall. Amara straightened slowly, her pulse loud in her ears. This was the moment, the test. She could react, could give them the show they wanted, or she could play the long game. She bent to retrieve her headphones, wiping them carefully on her sleeve before meeting Danica's gaze. You're right. Thanks for the warning. The laughter died. Danica's smirk faltered. Amara walked past them without another word, the whispers rising in her wake like a tide. Third period. Chemistry. The lab partner assignment was written on the board when Amara arrived. She scanned the list, her stomach dropping when she saw the names. Johnson and Hayes. Danica was already at their shared station, her expression unreadable. Amara took her seat without comment, pulling out her notebook. The teacher, Ms. Reynolds, clapped her hands for attention. Today we'll be working with hydrochloric acid. Safety goggles on at all times, people. Danica slid a pair of goggles across the table. Here. Don't want you to get hurt. Amara took them silently, checking for tampering before putting them on. The experiment was simple, testing reaction rates with different concentrations. Amara measured the acid carefully, keeping one eye on Danica at all times. So, Danica said casually as she poured her sample, where'd you move from? Out of state. Helpful. Danica's smile was all teeth. Parents drag you here for work or something? Amara adjusted her goggles. Something like that. Danica leaned in, lowering her voice. You know, people are talking about you. I noticed. They say you're hiding something. Amara didn't flinch. People say a lot of things. A beat. Then Danica's hand slipped, knocking over her beaker. The diluted acid spread across the table toward Amara. She reacted instantly, shoving back from the table as the liquid dripped onto the floor. Ms. Reynolds was at their station in seconds. What happened? Danica's eyes widened dramatically. It was an accident. She poured it toward me on purpose, Amara said calmly, standing. Gasps around the room. Danica's face flushed. That's a lie. Ms. Reynolds looked between them, her mouth tightening. Both of you. Principal's office. Now. Principal's office. Principal Hendricks was a tired-looking man in his 50s, his desk piled high with paperwork. He listened as Danica spun her story, the clumsy accident, the misunderstanding, the unfair accusation. Amara sat quietly, waiting. When Danica finished, Hendricks turned to her. "And what do you have to say, Miss Johnson?" Amara met his gaze evenly. "I'd like to call my guardian." Hendricks blinked. "That won't be necessary for a simple." "It is." Amara reached into her bag, pulling out the phone Elijah had given her. A sleek, unmarked device with exactly 2 contacts. She pressed the first one. It rang once before being answered. A deep male voice came through the speaker. "Situation. School principal needs to speak with you," Amara said, handing the phone to a bewildered Hendricks. 30 seconds later, the color drained from his face. "Why yes, sir. Of course, sir. Immediately." He hung up with shaking hands, staring at Amara like she'd grown a second head. Danica frowned. "What's going?" "Miss Hayes," Hendricks said sharply, "you're suspended for 1 week. Effective immediately." Danica's mouth fell open. Asterisk what asterisk? "But she's the one who—" "Your father will be notified. Please gather your things." As a sputtering Danica was escorted out, Hendricks turned to Amara. "Miss Johnson, if there's anything else you need." Amara stood, slipping the phone back into her pocket. "We're done here." Lunchtime. The cafeteria buzzed with the news. Danica Hayes, suspended. By the time Amara took her usual seat, the whispers had reached a fever pitch. She ate alone, watching as students cast nervous glances her way. Whatever story Danica had told, whatever reputation she'd built, it meant nothing now. Her phone buzzed. Asterisk satisfied. Asterisk. Amara smiled slightly, typing back. Asterisk for now. Asterisk. The reply came instantly. Asterisk good. Because we need to talk about your next move. Asterisk. She slipped the phone away, her appetite suddenly gone. Because Elijah was right. This was just the beginning. And Danica Hayes didn't strike her as the type to take defeat lying down. The next morning, the atmosphere at Crestwood High had shifted. Amara could feel it the moment she stepped off the bus. The way conversations stuttered as she passed. How eyes darted away when she turned her head. The invisible girl had suddenly become the center of attention. She kept her expression neutral as she walked through the halls, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The whispers followed her like a shadow. Asterisk, did you hear? Danica got suspended. Asterisk. Asterisk, no way. Her dad's on the school board. Asterisk. Asterisk, yeah, well, someone must have more pull than him. Asterisk. Amara ignored them all, focusing instead on the path to her locker. She spun the combination mechanically, the numbers ingrained in her muscle memory. The locker next to hers slammed shut with unnecessary force. Lena, Danica's second-in-command, leaned against the metal door, her arms crossed. You think you're so smart, don't you? Amara didn't look up as she swapped out her books. I don't think about you at all. Lena's face twisted. You won't be so smug when Danica gets back. Amara finally turned to face her, her voice low and even. Tell me something, Lena. Why are you so loyal to someone who wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire? The girl's confidence faltered for just a second before she recovered, jabbing a finger into Amara's shoulder. You don't know anything about us. Amara caught her wrist, holding it just tight enough to make her point. I know enough. She released her with a slight push. Now run along. Wouldn't want you to be late for class. Lena opened her mouth to retort, but the warning bell cut her off. With one last glare, she turned on her heel and stormed away. Amara watched her go, exhaling slowly. One down. How many more to go? Third period. Chemistry. Again. Ms. Reynolds had reassigned lab partners in Danica's absence. Amara found herself paired with Jason Wu, a quiet senior who mostly kept to himself. He nodded at her as she took her seat, pushing his glasses up his nose. Hey! Hey! They worked in comfortable silence, measuring chemicals and recording data. It wasn't until halfway through the period that Jason spoke again. So, you got Danica Hayes suspended. Amara didn't look up from her notes. She got herself suspended. Jason snorted. Yeah, right. That girl's been untouchable since freshman year. He glanced at her sideways. What did you do? Have dirt on her dad or something? Amara measured another drop of solution into their beaker. Or something. Jason studied her for a long moment before nodding, seemingly satisfied with her non-answer. Well, for what it's worth. The school could use more people like you. Amara paused, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Before she could respond, the classroom door burst open. Principal Hendricks stood in the doorway, his face grim. Amara Johnson? My office. Now. The entire class turned to stare. Amara set down her pipette carefully. May I ask why? Hendricks' jaw tightened. Your guardian is here. A chill ran down Amara's spine. Elijah wouldn't come here. He couldn't. Not without. Then it hit her. Danica's father. She stood slowly, her mind racing through possibilities as she followed Hendricks out. The walk to the office felt endless, every step heavier than the last. The reception area was empty except for a well-dressed man in his 50s, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his suit clearly expensive. He turned at the sound of the door, his cold blue eyes locking onto Amara with unsettling intensity. Robert Hayes. Amara stopped just inside the door, her posture straight but not aggressive. Mr. Hayes. His lip curled slightly. So you're the girl causing all the trouble. Hendricks cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this in my... No need. Hayes waved him off without looking away from Amara. This won't take long. He took a step forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I don't know who you think you are, but you've made a serious mistake targeting my daughter. Amara held his gaze. With all due respect, sir, your daughter targeted me. Hayes' expression darkened. Careful, girl. The warning was clear, but Amara had faced far more intimidating men than Robert Hayes. She tilted her head slightly. Is that a threat? For a split second, something like uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Let me make something very clear. You will apologize to Danica. You will retract your accusations. And you will never speak of this again. Or I promise you, your time at Crestwood will be unpleasant. Amara almost smiled. Are you finished? Hayes blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Because if we're done here, Amara continued calmly, I have a chemistry test to study for. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Hendricks looked like he might faint. Hayes recovered first, his face twisting into something ugly. You'll regret this. Amara turned toward the door. So I've been told. She walked out without waiting to be dismissed, her heart pounding in her chest. That had been reckless. Stupid, even. But something about the way Hayes had looked at her, like she was nothing, like she was less, had made her blood boil. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as she reached the hallway. Asterisk status. Asterisk. Amara typed one-handed as she walked. Asterisk, Danica's dad paid a visit. Made threats. Asterisk. The response was immediate. Asterisk, location. Asterisk. Asterisk, still at school. Don't do anything rash. Asterisk. A pause. Then. Asterisk, too late. Asterisk. Amara's stomach dropped. She was halfway to texting back when the school's PA system crackled to life. Amara Johnson. Please report to the main office immediately. Amara Johnson to the main office. She changed course, her steps quickening. Whatever Elijah had done, it couldn't be good. The office was in chaos when she arrived. Secretaries scrambled between desks, phones ringing off the hook. Hendricks stood pale-faced by the reception counter, clutching a clipboard like a lifeline. He spotted Amara and rushed forward. There you are. Come with me, quickly. He ushered her into his office, where two men in dark suits stood waiting. Amara recognized them instantly. Secret Service. The taller agent nodded to her. Miss Johnson, we've been instructed to escort you home. Hendricks wrung his hands. Of course, of course. Whatever you need. Amara kept her voice low. Where's Elijah? Waiting in the car, the agent murmured back. She exhaled sharply. This was bad. So bad. But there was nothing to do now but play along. The walk through the school was surreal. Students pressed against classroom windows as they passed, their faces alight with curiosity. By the time they reached the front entrance, the rumor mill would be in overdrive. The black SUV idled at the curb, its tinted windows hiding the most powerful man in the country from view. An agent opened the rear door, and Amara slid inside without hesitation. Elijah sat waiting, his expression thunderous. The door shut behind her, sealing them in silence. Amara spoke first. "You shouldn't be here." Elijah's jaw tightened. "And you shouldn't be dealing with threats from some two-bit school board member. He was just trying to intimidate me." It worked. Elijah turned to face her fully, his dark eyes blazing. "Do you have any idea what could have happened? If he'd..." Amara cut him off. "But he didn't. Because I can handle myself." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving Crestwood High behind. Elijah ran a hand over his face, the anger slowly draining from his posture. "I know you can. That's not the point. Then what is? That you shouldn't have to." The words burst out of him, raw and unfiltered. "Not when I can do something about it." Amara reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. "And what? Have the President of the United States bully some small-town politician? How would that look?" Elijah scowled but didn't pull away. "Better than the alternative." They rode in silence for a while, the city passing by in a blur. Finally, Elijah sighed. "At least let me transfer you." Amara shook her head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because if I run now, Danica wins." She met his gaze steadily. "And people like her? They always need to learn the hard way." Elijah studied her face for a long moment before exhaling sharply. "One more week. Then we reassess." Amara squeezed his hand. "Deal." The car turned onto the private drive, the gate swinging open to admit them. As they pulled up to the house, Elijah's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening further. "Problem?" Amara asked. He showed her the news alert. "Breaking. School board member Robert Hayes under federal investigation." Amara groaned. "Elijah!" He pocketed the phone with a shrug. "What? I said I wouldn't bully him. I didn't say anything about auditing his finances." Amara opened her mouth to argue, but the look on his face stopped her. Instead, she found herself laughing, the tension of the day finally breaking. Elijah grinned, pulling her closer. "That's what I like to hear." The car came to a stop, but neither of them moved to get out just yet. For this moment, in this space between school and sanctuary, they could just be. Amara rested her head against his shoulder, exhaling slowly. "It's going to be worse tomorrow, you know." Elijah pressed a kiss to her hair. "Then we'll handle it together." The next morning, Amara knew something was wrong the moment she stepped off the bus. The usual morning chatter died as she approached, replaced by hushed whispers and furtive glances. A group of students clustered around the bulletin board, their voices rising in excitement. She changed course, weaving through the crowd to see what had everyone's attention. The center of the board was dominated by a blown-up photograph, Amara, getting into the black SUV yesterday. The image was grainy but unmistakable. Beneath it, in bold red letters, "Who is Amara Johnson really?" A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her back. Jason Wu pulled her aside, his expression urgent. "You need to get out of here." Amara's pulse jumped. "What's going on?" "Danica's back," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "And she's pissed." As if on cue, the crowd parted, revealing Danica at the center of the hallway. Her eyes locked onto Amara with terrifying intensity. "Ah," Amara said quietly. "I see." Jason tugged at her sleeve. "Seriously, just go. She's been telling everyone you're some kind of criminal. That your guardian is." "Amara!" Danica's voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. "We need to talk." Amara straightened, slipping free of Jason's grip. "It's okay," she murmured. "I've got this." She walked forward, the sea of students parting around her. Danica stood waiting, her arms crossed, her usual smirk replaced by something colder. "Nice photo," Amara said when they were face to face. Danica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I have more. Want to see?" Amara held her gaze. Not particularly. Danica leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know who picked you up yesterday. That car. Those men. They're Secret Service. Amara's blood ran cold, but her expression didn't change. You're imagining things. Am I? Danica pulled out her phone, showing a video, the SUV's license plate, zoomed in and enhanced. My dad has friends in high places too, you know. It didn't take long to trace this back. Amara's mind raced. This was bad. Worse than bad. If Danica went public, as if reading her thoughts, Danica smirked. Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me. She paused. Asterisk for a price. Asterisk. Amara exhaled slowly. What do you want? Danica's smile turned predatory. Everything. The bell rang, signaling the start of first period, but neither Amara nor Danica moved. The hallway had emptied around them, leaving only the echo of slamming lockers and distant voices. Amara kept her voice low, controlled. You don't know what you're playing with. Danica twirled a strand of blonde hair around her finger, her smile all teeth. Oh, I think I do. Secret Service cars? Government plates. She leaned in, her breath hot against Amara's ear. You're someone important. Or at least, someone knows someone important. Amara's fingers curled into her palms, nails biting into skin. She needed to think. Needed to. Here's the deal, Danica continued, stepping back. You disappear. Transfer out by the end of the week. Or everyone finds out exactly what kind of strings your guardian had to pull to get you into Crestwood. Amara forced herself to breathe. And if I don't? Danica's grin widened. Then I release the photos. The video. The records my dad pulled. Let people draw their own conclusions. She shrugged. Though between you and me, teen girls dating older men? That never ends well in the court of public opinion. The implication hit like a punch to the gut. Danica didn't know about Elijah. Not really. But she'd guessed enough to be dangerous. Amara met her gaze evenly. You're making a mistake. Danica laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. No, you did the moment you thought you could mess with me. She turned on her heel, tossing one last remark over her shoulder. Friday. Johnson. Or the whole world finds out. Amara watched her go, the weight of the threat settling heavy on her shoulders. She needed to talk to Elijah. Oh. The empty classroom. Amara locked the bathroom stall door behind her before pulling out her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed the secure line. Elijah answered on the first ring. Talk to me. Danica knows, Amara whispered, pressing the phone close to her mouth. Not everything, but enough. She has photos of the car. The plates. A beat of silence. Then, where are you now? School bathroom. She just confronted me. Amara closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against the stall door. She wants me to transfer by Friday or she goes public. Elijah's exhale was sharp through the phone. All right. Listen carefully. Don't engage with her again. Don't confirm or deny anything. We'll handle this. Amara's stomach twisted. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. His voice was steel. I'll send a car at lunch. Be ready. The line went dead before she could argue. Amara pocketed the phone, taking deep, measured breaths. The reflection in the mirror above the sink looked pale, shadows under her eyes deeper than usual. She splashed cold water on her face, the shock of it helping to steady her nerves. One way or another, this ended today. Third period. Chemistry. Jason slid into the seat beside her, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by nervous energy. You okay? Amara kept her eyes on her notebook. Fine. Look about Danica. Don't. Amara finally looked at him, her voice low. The less you know, the better. Jason studied her face for a long moment before nodding. Okay, but if you need help. Amara managed a small smile. Thanks. The rest of the period passed in a blur. Amara took notes mechanically, her mind racing through scenarios, escape routes, damage control. By the time the bell rang, She had a plan. Or at least the beginnings of one. Lunchtime. Amara didn't go to the cafeteria. Instead, she slipped out a side door, heading for the empty bleachers behind the football field. The black SUV was already waiting, idling near the tree line. She climbed in without hesitation. Elijah wasn't inside. Instead, Agent Collins, his usual detail, sat in the passenger seat. He turned as she buckled in. "He's waiting at the house." Amara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The drive passed in silence. Amara watched the city blur by outside the window, her reflection ghostly against the glass. The gates to the residence swung open as they approached. The car hadn't even come to a complete stop before Amara was out, striding up the front steps. Elijah met her in the foyer, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He looked like he hadn't slept. Amara didn't give him a chance to speak first. "We need to contain this." Elijah's jaw tightened. "It's handled." "What does that mean?" He guided her into the study, shutting the door firmly behind them. "It means Robert Hayes is currently being questioned by the FBI regarding several financial discrepancies." Amara stared at him. "You had her father arrested?" "Not arrested. Questioned." Elijah ran a hand through his hair. "It buys us time. Without her father's connections, Danica has no way to verify her theories." Amara shook her head. "She already has the photos. The video. She doesn't need verification. Just a platform." Elijah's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening further. "We may have a bigger problem." Amara's stomach dropped. "What now?" He turned the screen toward her. A Twitter notification. Danica's account. Asterisk guess who's dating a government official? Stay tuned for the big reveal at 3 p.m. Hashtag Crestwood Scandal asterisk. Amara's vision tunneled. "She's bluffing." "Is she?" Elijah's voice was grim. "We can't take that chance." Amara began pacing, her mind racing. "We need to get ahead of this. Control the narrative." Elijah caught her arm, stopping her mid-step. "There's another option." Amara searched his face. "What?" "We go public first." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Amara pulled away. "No, absolutely not." "It solves everything," Elijah pressed. "No more secrets. No more blackmail." We agreed." Amara cut in, her voice sharp. "No going public until I graduate. Until I have a life outside of being the president's girlfriend." Elijah's expression softened. "Amara." "No." She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm. "There has to be another way." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken arguments. Finally, Elijah exhaled sharply. "All right, then we do it your way." He pulled out his phone. "But we move now." 2:45 p.m. Crestwood High. Amara stepped off the bus again, the afternoon sun warm on her back. The school grounds were quieter now, most students already in their final classes. She made her way to the library, where Danica had instructed her to meet. The large empty study room in the back was deserted except for Danica herself, perched on the edge of a table, phone in hand. "You're late," she said without looking up. Amara shut the door behind her. "I'm here." Danica finally glanced up, her smirk fading slightly when she saw Amara's expression. "Made your decision?" Amara crossed her arms. "Let's hear your terms." Danica's smile returned, triumphant. "Simple. You transfer out by tomorrow. Never come back. And you tell me exactly who your mystery man is." Amara didn't blink. "And if I refuse?" Danica held up her phone, the tweet still visible. "Then the whole world finds out in." She made a show of checking the time. 10 minutes. Amara studied her for a long moment before nodding. "All right." Danica blinked. All right, you win." Amara reached into her backpack, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "My transfer paperwork. Signed and ready." Danica's eyes lit up as she snatched it, scanning the document greedily. "I knew you'd see reason." Amara watched her carefully. "Now delete the tweet." Danica laughed. Not until you tell me who he is. Amara exhaled slowly. Then she reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone. Actually, I think he'd rather tell you himself. She turned the screen toward Danica. A video call was already connected. Elijah Carter, the President of the United States, staring back at them from the Oval Office. Danica's face went white. "Miss Hayes," Elijah said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I believe we need to have a conversation." Danica's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Amara allowed herself a small smile. "Checkmate." Danica's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her hands trembled at her sides, fingers twitching toward the phone on the floor as if it might bite her. The color had drained completely from her face, leaving her normally flawless complexion ashen. Amara bent down slowly and picked up the phone, holding it up so Elijah's face filled the screen again. "I think we have her attention," she said dryly. Elijah's expression remained stern, his presidential mask firmly in place. "Miss Hayes, I'm going to speak plainly. You will delete that tweet immediately. You will destroy any photos or videos you've taken. And you will never speak of this again." Danica finally found her voice, though it came out as little more than a squeak. But you can't." "I can." Elijah's tone left no room for argument. "And I will. Do you know what happens to people who attempt to blackmail the President of the United States?" Danica shook her head mutely. "Federal prison," Elijah said simply. 10 years minimum. And that's before we discuss the cybercrimes your father just committed by accessing government vehicle records. Amara watched as Danica's knees actually buckled, forcing her to grab the edge of the table for support. The reality of the situation was clearly crashing down on her all at once. "I didn't know," Danica whispered. "I swear I didn't." "Save it," Amara cut in. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second document. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign this non-disclosure agreement. Then you're going to call your father and tell him to stop fighting the FBI investigation. If he cooperates, he might avoid jail time." Danica stared at the papers like they were written in another language. "You can't be serious." Elijah's voice came through the phone, colder than Amara had ever heard it. "Try me." The next 5 minutes passed in a blur. Danica signed the NDA with shaking hands, her signature barely legible. She deleted the tweet and all related photos from her phone while Amara watched, then emptied her trash folder for good measure. By the time it was over, Danica looked like she might be sick. Amara ended the call with Elijah and slipped her phone back into her pocket. "One last thing," she said, stepping closer to Danica. "If I hear even a whisper of this, from you, your friends, anyone, I won't stop him from ruining your entire family." "Understood." Danica nodded jerkily, tears welling in her eyes. Amara turned toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "Oh, and Danica?" She glanced back over her shoulder. "Welcome to the real world. It's not nearly as forgiving as high school." The aftermath. The next week passed in relative quiet. Danica and her clique avoided Amara entirely, scattering like frightened birds whenever she entered a room. The school buzzed with rumors about why Danica had suddenly withdrawn her bullying campaign, but without proof or social media posts to fuel the fire, the speculation eventually died down. Robert Hayes resigned from the school board amid the ongoing FBI investigation. Amara caught glimpses of news reports on television at Elijah's residence. Financial misconduct, tax evasion, the usual white-collar crimes. She wondered sometimes if all the charges were entirely accurate, or if some had been encouraged. She never asked. Elijah was unusually busy during those days, often locked in meetings until late at night. When they did see each other, there was a new tension between them, unspoken but palpable. It all came to a head one rainy Thursday evening. Amara was curled up in the study with a book when Elijah finally came home, his suit damp from the rain. He paused in the doorway, watching her for a long moment before speaking. "We need to talk." Amara marked her page and set the book aside. "Okay." Elijah sank into the chair opposite her, running a hand over his tired face. "The Attorney General informed me today that Robert Hayes is considering a plea deal." Amara nodded slowly. "That's good, right?" "It should be." Elijah's jaw tightened. But part of the deal would require him to disclose how he accessed those vehicle records. which means someone in my administration would need to testify about our relationship. The unspoken meaning hung between them. Going public. Amara stood abruptly, crossing to the window. The rain streaked down the glass in rivulets, distorting the city lights beyond. There has to be another way. Elijah came up behind her, close but not touching. There isn't. Not this time. She turned to face him, searching his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying. He exhaled sharply. I can't keep asking you to hide, to pretend. It's not fair to you. Amara crossed her arms, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. We agreed. I know what we agreed, Elijah interrupted gently. But that was before Danica, before the investigation. The situation has changed. Amara turned back to the window, watching the rain. She'd known this moment would come eventually, had dreaded it, really. The idea of photographers following her to school, of news outlets dissecting her every move, of never again being just Amara Johnson. Elijah's hand settled on her shoulders, warm and steady. I won't force you into anything, but I need to know, can you do this? With me? Amara closed her eyes. The truth was, she'd known the answer from the moment she'd fallen for him. Known that loving Elijah Carter would never be simple, never be quiet. She turned in his arms, meeting his gaze squarely. Yes. Elijah's breath caught. Yes. Amara nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. But on one condition. Name it. No more secrets, she said firmly. No more hiding. If we're doing this, we do it all the way. Elijah's answering smile could have lit up the room. Deal. He kissed her then, slow and sweet, the rain pounding against the windows like applause. 2 weeks later, the White House press briefing room was packed beyond capacity. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashing as the press secretary stepped up to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Elijah walked out to a barrage of questions, his posture relaxed but his expression serious. He waited for the room to quiet before speaking. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I have a brief statement to make, after which I will not be taking questions. A murmur ran through the crowd. Unusual, but not unprecedented. Elijah adjusted the microphone slightly. Over the past several months, there have been rumors and speculation regarding my personal life. Today, I'd like to set the record straight. He paused, his gaze scanning the room before settling on a spot just to the left of the cameras. Amara stood there, out of frame but close enough to see the determination in his eyes. It's true that I'm in a relationship, Elijah continued, his voice steady, with an extraordinary young woman named Amara Johnson. The room exploded. Shouted questions, camera flashes, the scrape of chairs as reporters leapt to their feet. Elijah held up a hand for silence. Amara is a high school student at Crestwood Academy. She's brilliant, kind, and far more courageous than I could ever hope to be. A small, private smile touched his lips. And yes, before you ask, I'm fully aware of how lucky I am. Another wave of noise rolled through the press corps. Elijah waited it out. I understand this is unconventional. I understand there will be questions. What I ask, what we both ask, is that you respect Amara's privacy during this transition. She didn't choose public life, but she's facing it with more grace than most seasoned politicians. His expression turned serious again. One final note. The investigation into Robert Hayes has concluded with his acceptance of a plea deal. The Justice Department will be releasing a full statement this afternoon. Thank you. And with that, he turned and walked off stage, ignoring the shouted questions behind him. Amara met him in the hallway, her heart pounding. You did great. Elijah exhaled sharply, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. They're going to have a field day with this. Amara took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Let them. For the first time in months, she felt strangely light. The secret was out. The waiting was over. Whatever came next, the scrutiny, the attention, the inevitable challenges, they would face it together. No more hiding. Epilogue. 1 month later. The first day back at Crestwood after the announcement was everything Amara had expected and nothing like she'd feared. There were stares, of course. Whispers. The occasional brave soul who approached her between classes with wide-eyed questions. But mostly, life went on. Danica had transferred schools the week prior. Lena and the rest of her clique kept their distance, their usual bravado replaced by wary silence. Jason caught up with her at lunch, dropping into the seat across from her with his usual lack of ceremony. "So, the president, huh?" Amara sipped her juice, fighting a smile. "Yeah." Jason shook his head, laughing quietly. "I knew there was something weird about you." Amara laughed too, the sound startling her with its ease. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Her phone buzzed, a text from Elijah. Asterisk, "How's it going?" Asterisk. Amara typed back with one hand, her other stealing one of Jason's fries. Asterisk, "Better than expected." Asterisk. The reply came instantly. Asterisk, "Told you." Asterisk. Amara smiled down at her phone, the weight of the last few months finally lifting. Whatever came next, she was ready. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as the graduates filed into their seats. Amara adjusted her cap, the tassel swinging in her periphery as she scanned the crowd. Secret Service agents stood at every exit, their presence subtle but unmistakable. "Stop fidgeting," Jason whispered from beside her. "You're making the rest of us look bad." Amara forced her hands to still. "Sorry. Just a lot of eyes." Jason followed her gaze to the VIP section where Elijah sat, looking more like a proud boyfriend than the president in his dark suit and Crestwood blue tie. The cameras had been relentless since his arrival, though the school had strictly enforced a no-media policy inside the ceremony. Principal Hendricks stepped up to the podium. "Today, we celebrate not just academic achievement, but growth, character, the kind of resilience that—" A murmur rippled through the crowd as someone entered late. Amara turned to see Danica Hayes slipping into a back row seat, her blonde hair shorter than Amara remembered. Their eyes met for a brief, electric moment before Danica looked away. Jason elbowed Amara. "You okay?" Amara faced forward again. "Yeah. Just surprised she came." The ceremony passed in a blur of speeches and awards. When Amara's name was called, the applause was louder than for most, though whether for her or her famous boyfriend, she couldn't tell. Elijah stood as she crossed the stage, his smile visible even from the distance. Diploma in hand, Amara allowed herself one deep breath. High school was over. The after party. The White House East Room had been transformed into a graduation celebration, complete with a chocolate fountain and a DJ spinning low-key beats. Amara circulated among her classmates, most of whom still seemed awestruck by their surroundings. "Can you believe this place?" Jason asked through a mouthful of shrimp cocktail. "I mean, I knew you were dating the president, but this is next level." Amara smiled. "Wait until you see the movie theater." A warm hand settled on the small of her back. Elijah leaned down to whisper, "You ready for your surprise?" Amara turned in his arms. "You know I hate surprises." Elijah just grinned, leading her to the center of the room where a large box sat wrapped in silver paper. The crowd gathered around as Amara untied the bow. Inside was a single airplane ticket. "Paris." Amara looked up in confusion. "But my internship at Georgetown starts." "Delayed until fall," Elijah finished. "1 month. Just us. No security detail, no press pool." Amara's eyes widened. "How?" Elijah's smile turned sly. "Turns out being president has some perks." The room erupted in cheers as Amara threw her arms around him. For the first time in years, the future stretched before her. Bright, open, and full of possibility. The private jet touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport just as the first light of dawn painted the Parisian skyline in soft pastels. Amara pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city come alive beneath them. Elijah's hand rested warm on her knee, his thumb tracing absent circles through the fabric of her jeans. "Still hate flying?" he asked, amusement coloring his voice. Amara shot him a look. "I don't hate it. I just prefer when the ground stays where it's supposed to be." The plane taxied to a private hangar where a single black sedan waited. No motorcade, no security detail. Just one driver who nodded respectfully before stowing their luggage. Elijah held the door open for Amara, his smile widening at her raised eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," Amara said, sliding into the car. "Just never pictured the president playing chauffeur." Elijah ducked in after her. "For you. Always." The drive into the city passed in comfortable silence, Amara's nose nearly pressed to the window as they crossed the Seine. The early morning light turned the water to liquid gold, the Eiffel Tower rising in the distance like a sentinel. Their hotel was a discreet boutique establishment in the 7th arrondissement. The manager greeted them personally, ushering them to a penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Amara whistled low. "This is your idea of no perks?" Elijah dropped their bags by the door. "I may have called in one small favor." The room was all clean lines and understated luxury. Plush white couches, a marble fireplace, a bedroom with crisp linens and a view that made Amara's breath catch. She crossed to the window, pressing her palms against the glass. "I've never been out of the country before," she admitted quietly. Elijah came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder as they took in the view together. "First of many trips, then." Amara turned in his arms, studying his face. The faint lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there when they'd first met, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. The presidency had aged him, but in this light, he looked almost boyish again. "What?" he asked, smiling at her scrutiny. Amara shook her head. "Just wondering when the other shoe drops." Elijah laughed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "No shoes. No surprises. Just you and me for 30 days. Day 3. Montmartre ***. Amara's sketchbook lay open on a cafe table, her charcoal smudging as she captured the lively street scene before them. Artists hawking their wares, tourists clutching maps, a street performer belting out La Vie en Rose with surprising skill. Elijah returned with 2 steaming cups of coffee, setting one carefully aside from her drawing. "You're good," he observed, peering over her shoulder. Amara shrugged, shading in the folds of a vendor's apron. "It's just practice. Modesty doesn't suit you," Elijah teased, stealing a sip of her coffee before she could swat his hand away. They spent the afternoon wandering the cobblestone streets, ducking into tiny galleries and watching painters at their easels. At the top of the butte, with all of Paris spread out beneath them, Elijah pulled her close as a street photographer snapped their picture. "Think he recognized you?" Amara murmured against his chest. Elijah's arms tightened around her. "Don't care." The word sent a warm thrill through her. After years of secrecy and calculated public appearances, this careless anonymity felt like a gift. Day 7. Midnight in the Louvre. The email had arrived that morning. A single line from an address Amara didn't recognize. * tonight. 11:30 p.m. South entrance. * Elijah had just shrugged when she showed him. "Trust me." Now, standing before the darkened museum, Amara crossed her arms. "You do realize breaking into the Louvre is a felony, right? Even for presidents." Elijah just grinned, producing a key card from his pocket. "Who said anything about breaking in?" The security guard waved them through with a knowing nod. Inside, the grand gallery stood empty, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. Moonlight streamed through the glass pyramid, casting geometric shadows across ancient statues. Amara spun slowly, taking it all in. "How?" "Official presidential request," Elijah said, though his smirk suggested there was more to the story. He held out his hand. "Dance with me." There was no music, just the whisper of their footsteps as they waltzed through the empty halls, past the Venus de Milo and the Winged Victory. In the Italian painting gallery, Elijah stopped before the Mona Lisa, pulling Amara close. "Not quite as impressive in person," she admitted. Elijah's lips brushed her ear. "I was looking at you." Amara turned in his arms, struck suddenly by the surreality of the moment. Just the two of them, alone with centuries of art and history. No handlers, no schedules, no weight of the world on his shoulders. She kissed him there, in the heart of the Louvre, with Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile watching over them. Day 14. A storm over the Seine. The rain started just as they boarded the Bateau Mouche, fat droplets splattering against the deck as the boat pulled away from the dock. Most tourists huddled inside, but Amara dragged Elijah to the prow, laughing as the wind whipped her curls into a frenzy. "You're going to catch cold," Elijah shouted over the downpour. Amara spread her arms, tilting her face to the storm. Live a little. The boat rounded Isle de la Cite, Notre Dame rising dark and gothic against the stormy sky. Lightning split the clouds, illuminating the cathedral in stark relief. Amara gasped, fumbling for her camera, but the moment had passed. Elijah watched her with an odd expression. You see beauty in everything, don't you? Amara blinked water from her lashes. Comes from growing up in the dark. You learn to look for light. Something in his face shifted then, but before she could ask, a particularly violent wave sent her stumbling into his chest. Elijah held her close as the storm raged around them, his heartbeat steady against her ear. Day 21. A missing president. Amara woke to an empty bed and a note on the pillow. Asterisk gone for a run. Meet me at our cafe at noon. Asterisk. She rolled her eyes. Even on vacation, the man couldn't sleep past dawn. The morning passed lazily, a long bath, fresh croissants from the bakery downstairs, a chapter of the novel she'd been meaning to finish. At 11:30, she set out for their usual spot, a charming little cafe near the Sorbonne. Elijah wasn't there. Amara checked her phone. No messages. She ordered a coffee, then another. By 1 p.m., worry gnawed at her gut. Excusez-moi, she asked the waiter in halting French. Have you seen my boyfriend? Tall, American, ridiculously good-looking. The waiter's eyes lit with recognition. Ah oui. He left this for you. He produced a small envelope from his apron. Inside was a single metro ticket and a clue written in Elijah's messy scrawl. Where we first danced. Amara's pulse quickened. The Louvre. The hunt begins. The Louvre security guard waved her through with a knowing smile. In the Italian gallery, another envelope waited taped beneath a bench. Our first kiss. The Ponta Arts, where they'd stopped to watch the sunset their second night. Amara hurried across the city, her sneakers slapping against cobblestones. On the bridge, a street vendor handed her another clue without being asked. Where you first told me you loved me. The memory hit her like a physical thing. Their tiny hotel room, rain pattering against the windows, Elijah's lips tracing the curve of her shoulder as she whispered the words into the dark. The hotel manager greeted her by name, pressing an envelope into her hands. Where I knew I'd love you forever. Amara's breath caught. There was only one place that could be. The rooftop. The sun hung low over Paris as Amara pushed open the rooftop access door. The terrace was empty save for a single table set for two, candles flickering in the evening breeze. Elijah stood at the railing, silhouetted against the golden sky. He turned as she approached, his smile softer than she'd ever seen it. Took you long enough, he teased. Amara held up the stack of envelopes. You're lucky I'm good at puzzles. Elijah closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. I had this whole speech planned, he murmured, about how you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. How I can't imagine a future without you in it. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. Sounds cheesy. It was, Elijah admitted with a laugh. Then he dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Amara Johnson, will you? Yes. Elijah blinked up at her. I haven't even asked yet. Amara pulled him to his feet, kissing him soundly. The answer's yes. The ring slipped onto her finger with perfect ease, the diamond catching the last light of sunset. Elijah's arms wrapped around her as the Eiffel Tower began to sparkle in the distance, its nightly light show just for them. Epilogue. The announcement. The White House press corps was in full frenzy when they returned. Rumors had swirled during their absence. Photos of the ring, whispers from hotel staff. Elijah had insisted on doing it properly, though. The briefing room fell silent as they entered hand in hand. Amara's left hand rested lightly on Elijah's arm, the diamond catching the light with every movement. Elijah didn't bother with a podium this time. He stood before the cameras with Amara at his side, his voice steady. Some personal news. This past week in Paris, I asked Amara to marry me. And, miracle of miracles, she said yes. The room erupted. Questions shouted, cameras flashing. Through it all, Elijah's hand never left hers. Amara smiled at the chaos, at the man beside her, at the wild, improbable future stretching out before them. Whatever came next, They'd face it together. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright over Washington, D.C. Amara stood at the window of the Queen's bedroom, watching the sunrise paint the White House lawn in golden light. The manicured grounds below bustled with activity. Florists arranging the last of the peonies along the aisle, staff setting up chairs on the south lawn, Secret Service agents discreetly checking every detail. A soft knock at the door announced her mother's arrival. Vivian Johnson carried 2 steaming mugs of tea, her dark eyes shining with unshed tears as she took in her daughter in the simple silk robe, her hair still loose around her shoulders. "Can't believe my baby's getting married today," Vivian said, pressing a kiss to Amara's temple before handing her a mug. Amara smiled into her tea. "Still feels surreal." Vivian touched the side of Amara's face gently. "You're sure about this?" "About him. The life that comes with him." The question wasn't unexpected. They'd had some version of this conversation a dozen times since the engagement. Amara covered her mother's hand with her own. "I love him, Mom. And I'm ready for whatever comes with that." Vivian studied her daughter's face for a long moment before nodding. "All right then. Let's get you dressed." The dress. It wasn't the elaborate gown the press had speculated about. No designer labels or political statements. Just simple ivory silk that skimmed Amara's curves before cascading to the floor in soft folds. The neckline dipped modestly in front, the back plunging dramatically to showcase the smooth brown skin of her shoulders. "Perfect," Vivian breathed as she fastened the single heirloom pearl at Amara's throat, her grandmother's, brought over from Jamaica 60 years ago. The hairstylist worked quietly, weaving Amara's curls into an elegant updo with a few tendrils left free to frame her face. The makeup artist kept it simple, just enough to highlight her dark eyes and full lips. When they finally let her look in the full-length mirror, Amara barely recognized herself. The girl who'd once hidden in the back of classrooms to avoid attention now stood regal and radiant, every inch a bride. A soft gasp came from the doorway. Jason Wu stood frozen, his boutonniere slightly crooked, his eyes wide behind his glasses. "Holy shit, Johnson." Amara laughed. "That bad?" Jason adjusted his glasses, blinking rapidly. "The New York Times called you unremarkable last week. They're gonna eat their words." The ceremony. The Marine Band struck up the processional as Amara stepped onto the south lawn. 400 guests rose as one. Dignitaries and diplomats mixed with Amara's high school teachers and college friends. Every face turned toward her, but Amara had eyes for only one. Elijah stood at the flower-covered arbor, resplendent in his morning suit, his dark skin glowing in the sunlight. His breath caught audibly when he saw her, his lips parting in wonder. Amara barely registered walking down the aisle. She floated past smiling faces, her hand tucked securely in her mother's arm, her gaze locked with Elijah's. When they reached the front, Vivian kissed Amara's cheek before placing her hand in Elijah's. "You look," Elijah began, then shook his head at a loss for words. Amara squeezed his fingers. "I know." The officiant, a female judge who'd sworn Elijah into office, smiled at their whispered exchange before beginning the ceremony. "We are gathered here today." The words washed over Amara like a dream. She repeated her vows in a clear, steady voice, sliding a simple platinum band onto Elijah's finger. His hands trembled slightly as he did the same for her, his voice thick with emotion when he promised to love and cherish her. When the judge finally pronounced them married, Elijah didn't wait for permission to kiss his bride. The crowd erupted in cheers as he dipped Amara dramatically, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that left no doubt about their passion. The Marine Band launched into a triumphant recessional as they walked back up the aisle, hand in hand, grinning like fools. Secret Service agents materialized to guide them toward the Rose Garden for photos, but Elijah pulled Amara into a secluded alcove first. "Mr. President," Amara teased, "aren't we supposed to be?" Elijah silenced her with another kiss, his hands framing her face. "Just needed a moment with my wife." The word sent a thrill through her. Wife. They were really doing this. The reception. The East Room had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Thousands of white roses dripped from the ceilings, their scent mingling with the aroma of the 5-course meal being served. The long tables were set with the White House china, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandeliers. Amara and Elijah made their grand entrance to thunderous applause, making their way to the sweetheart table beneath a canopy of flowers. The toasts began almost immediately. Jason's surprisingly heartfelt speech about friendship, the vice president's predictably political remarks, Vivian's emotional tribute that had half the room in tears. Then it was Elijah's turn. He stood, tapping his glass for silence, his free hand never leaving Amara's. "I won't keep you long," he began, his voice carrying easily in the hushed room. "Most of you know I'm better with prepared speeches than off-the-cuff remarks." A chuckle ran through the crowd. But today isn't about politics or policy. It's about the woman who changed everything. His grip on Amara's hand tightened. "Amara saw me before I was president, loved me before the title. And somehow, against all odds, she sees the man beneath the office every single day." He turned to face her fully. "You're my heart, my home, and I promise to spend every day of forever deserving you." The room dissolved into applause as he kissed her again. Amara barely had time to wipe her tears before the band struck up their first dance, a soulful rendition of "At Last," performed by a surprise guest artist. Elijah led her to the floor, his hand warm at the small of her back. "Happy," he murmured as they swayed. Amara rested her head against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with the roses all around them. "I never knew I could be this happy." The surprise. Just before midnight, Elijah whispered in Amara's ear, "Ready for your wedding present?" She arched an eyebrow. "You mean besides the husband thing?" Elijah laughed, leading her through a discreet side door where two agents waited with overnight bags. A helicopter sat idling on the south lawn, its blades kicking up a light breeze. "Change of plans," Elijah shouted over the noise as he helped her inside. "Honeymoon starts tonight." Amara buckled her seatbelt as they lifted off, the White House shrinking below them. "What about all our luggage? The itinerary?" Elijah just grinned, handing her a blindfold. "Trust me." An hour later, the blindfold came off to reveal a private airfield. Not Air Force One, but a sleek, unmarked jet. The stairs were lined with candles, rose petals scattered along the path. Amara turned to Elijah. "Where are we going?" He kissed her temple. "Somewhere no one will find us." The cabin was all plush white couches and chilled champagne. As the plane taxied down the runway, Elijah produced a small box from his pocket. "One more thing." Inside was a simple gold key. Amara frowned. "What's this for?" "Our house," Elijah said softly. "In the Virgin Islands. Fully staffed. Completely private. Just us for 2 whole weeks." The enormity of the gift sank in slowly. No security details. No schedules. No one watching. Just them together, as normal as they'd ever get to be. Amara threw her arms around his neck, kissing him soundly as the plane climbed into the night sky. "Best wedding ever," she murmured against his lips. Elijah's laughter filled the cabin as he pulled her closer. "Just the beginning, Mrs. Carter." The morning sun streamed through the sheer curtains of their private villa, painting golden stripes across the rumpled sheets. Amara stretched languidly, her body still humming from the night before. The space beside her was empty but still warm, the scent of Elijah's cologne lingering on the pillow. She found him on the veranda, shirtless, his dark skin glistening in the humidity as he sipped coffee and scanned a tablet. The view beyond him took her breath away, turquoise water stretching to the horizon, palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. "Work?" Amara asked, pressing a kiss to his shoulder as she reached for his coffee. Elijah surrendered the mug without protest. "Just checking in. The world didn't collapse while we were occupied." Amara smirked into the coffee. "Good to know." He tugged her onto his lap, nuzzling her neck. 2 more weeks of this. No meetings. No cameras. Just you and me and this ridiculous bed. Amara traced the scar on his shoulder, a souvenir from his military days. "What happens when we go back?" Elijah's hand stilled on her waist. "What do you mean?" "I mean..." Amara turned to face him fully. "What does being First Lady actually look like? I don't exactly have a manual for this." Elijah studied her face, his expression turning serious. "It looks like whatever you wanted to. You could focus on traditional hostess duties, or champion causes you care about, or ignore the role entirely and finish your degree." He cupped her face. "There's no wrong answer." Amara exhaled slowly, watching a frigate bird circle over the water. I want to do something meaningful, not just cut ribbons and smile for photos. Elijah's smile was proud. Then that's what you'll do. The return. The White House felt different when they returned. More like home now that it was theirs together. Amara stood in the center of the bedroom they'd chosen as theirs, taking in the freshly painted walls and new furniture. You redecorated, she observed, running a hand over the sleek modern dresser. Elijah wrapped his arms around her from behind. Figured you'd want your own touch. The whole place is yours to change. Amara turned in his arms. Our touch. The next morning, reality set in. A stack of invitations and requests waited on Amara's new desk in the East Wing. Charity galas, school visits, interviews. A separate folder contained briefing materials on current policy issues. Her chief of staff, a no-nonsense woman named Miriam, walked her through the options. We can start small if you'd like. Maybe a literacy initiative or education reform, Amara said suddenly, tapping one of the briefings. Specifically in underserved urban schools. Miriam blinked. That's quite ambitious for a first project. Amara met her gaze evenly. I grew up in those schools. I know what they need. A slow smile spread across Miriam's face. Well then, let's get to work. First test. The press conference had been Miriam's idea, a soft launch of Amara's initiative before the official announcement. Just a small gathering of education reporters in the White House briefing room. Amara stood backstage, smoothing her burgundy sheath dress for the 10th time. You'll be great, Elijah murmured, adjusting his tie beside her. Amara shot him a look. Says the man who gives speeches for a living. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Just talk like you do to me. The rest will follow. The moderator announced her, and Amara stepped into the lights. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. When I entered the White House as First Lady, I knew I wanted my work to reflect the realities of students who look like me, who come from neighborhoods like mine. She outlined her plan, a nationwide assessment of school funding disparities, followed by targeted grants and mentorship programs. The reporters scribbled notes, their expressions neutral. Then came questions. Mrs. Carter, how do you respond to critics who say you're overstepping the traditional role of First Lady? Amara smiled. I'd say education has never been partisan. And if advocating for children is overstepping, then I'm guilty as charged. Another reporter jumped in. What qualifies you to lead such an initiative? Amara's grip tightened on the podium. 18 years as a student in underfunded schools qualifies me quite well. The room fell silent. She continued, her voice gaining strength. I sat in classrooms with peeling paint and outdated textbooks. I had teachers who bought supplies with their own salaries. That experience, and my subsequent education at Sidwell Friends on scholarship, showed me both the problems and the solutions. By the time she finished, even the skeptical reporters looked impressed. Backstage, Elijah pulled her into a crushing hug. Damn woman, he breathed against her hair. You just rewrote the playbook. The first fight. It started with a scheduling conflict, a state dinner for the French president overlapping with Amara's first school visit in Detroit. I can reschedule the dinner, Elijah offered over breakfast. Amara shook her head. Don't be ridiculous. I'll move the school visit. Elijah set down his coffee. It's your first major initiative event. Of course it takes priority. Over foreign relations? Amara arched an eyebrow. I may be new to this, but even I know that's not how it works. Elijah's jaw tightened. It's how it should work. Your work matters just as much as mine. Amara reached across the table, squeezing his hand. I appreciate that. Really. But we both knew what we signed up for. The presidency comes first. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Elijah looked like he wanted to argue further, but his phone buzzed with a security alert. Saved by the bell, Amara teased, lightening the mood. Elijah pocketed his phone with a sigh. This conversation isn't over. Public scrutiny. The backlash hit 2 weeks later. A conservative news outlet ran a scathing piece questioning Amara's qualifications. complete with anonymous quotes from senior administration officials, criticizing her initiative as naive and unrealistic. Amara read the article in bed, her stomach churning. Elijah snatched the tablet away when he saw her expression. "Don't give them the satisfaction," he growled, setting it aside. Amara hugged her knees to her chest. "Are there really people in your administration who feel that way?" Elijah's hesitation told her everything. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Some of the old guard still think first ladies should stick to tea parties and hospital visits. They'll adjust. Amara stared at the city lights beyond their window. "Or I'll make them." Breaking protocol. Amara stood outside the Oval Office, listening to the raised voices inside. Completely inappropriate to undermine the First Lady's initiative. Elijah's voice carried through the door. A calmer, older voice responded. "Chief of Staff Daniels, no doubt. Mr. President, I'm simply advising caution. The optics of her visiting those schools without proper." Amara pushed the door open. Both men turned, their expressions freezing. "Amara," Elijah began, but she held up a hand. "I think this is my conversation to have." She turned to Daniels. "What exactly are your concerns about my school visits?" Daniels recovered quickly, smoothing his tie. "Mrs. Carter, we simply want to ensure your safety and the success of your program. Some of these neighborhoods are where I grew up," Amara finished coolly. "If my husband can visit war zones, I can visit American schools." Daniels looked to Elijah, who simply crossed his arms, his expression proud. Amara continued, "Now, I'd appreciate your support in making this initiative successful. But make no mistake, I will be visiting those schools. With or without your blessing." The silence stretched. Finally, Daniels nodded. "I'll coordinate with your team on security." When the door closed behind him, Elijah let out a low whistle. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Amara sank into his lap, the tension draining from her shoulders. "Just getting started, Mr. President." The visit. The cameras followed Amara every step of her first school visit, through crumbling hallways, into overcrowded classrooms, listening to exhausted teachers describe doing more with less. But it was the conversation afterward that made headlines. Seated at a too-small desk with a group of high school seniors, Amara answered their questions with startling honesty. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong?" one girl asked quietly. Amara met her eyes. "Every single day." The room stilled. "I walk into state dinners and wonder if someone's going to realize they made a mistake inviting me," Amara continued. "But then I remember, my experiences matter just as much as anyone's in that room. Maybe more, because I haven't forgotten what it's like to sit where you're sitting." One boy leaned forward. "How do we get where you are?" Amara smiled. "By refusing to accept that where you start determines where you finish." The raw, unfiltered exchange went viral within hours. By evening, #RealFirstLady was trending nationwide. Coming into her own. 6 months into her tenure, Amara stood before Congress to testify about her initiative's findings. No First Lady had ever addressed a joint session on policy. Another norm shattered. Elijah watched from the gallery, his expression bursting with pride as she commanded the room with quiet authority. "Our schools are the bedrock of our democracy," Amara declared, her voice ringing through the chamber. "And right now, that foundation is crumbling. Not in some abstract future, but today, in classrooms just miles from this very building." She outlined her proposals with the precision of a seasoned policymaker, fielding challenging questions with grace. When she finished to a standing ovation, even her harshest critics had to applaud. That night, curled together in bed, Elijah traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "You were magnificent today." Amara hummed contentedly. "Just getting warmed up." Elijah laughed, pulling her closer. "God help Washington." Outside their window, the city lights shimmered, holding space for all the change yet to come. 8 years later, the White House felt different in its final days. The walls seemed to exhale, the weight of the presidency lifting as packing boxes stacked up in the halls. Amara stood in the solarium, watching the morning light filter through the glass. The space had been her refuge, where she'd studied for her master's in education policy, where she'd hosted roundtables with activists and students, where she'd rocked their newborn son to sleep during late-night crises of state. Elijah's arms slipped around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts?" Amara leaned back into him. "Just thinking about the first time I walked in here. How terrified I was." Elijah chuckled, his breath warm against her neck. "You? Terrified? Never." She turned in his arms to face him. At 45, the presidency had left its mark on Elijah. More gray at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes, but he still looked at her with the same boyish wonder as that first night in Paris. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked, brushing a curl from her face. Amara glanced at the moving boxes labeled Princeton. Elijah had accepted a visiting professorship at his alma mater, while she'd been offered a position leading the university's Education Equity Initiative. Their son, Jamal, was already excited about starting kindergarten in the fall. "More than ready," she admitted. The last walk. The farewell ceremony on the South Lawn was everything the White House social office could orchestrate. Military band, honor guard, rows of staffers blinking back tears. Elijah's speech was characteristically eloquent, thanking the nation for the privilege of service. But it was Amara's brief remarks that caught the nation's attention. "When I came to this house," she said, her voice clear in the crisp January air, "I was a girl who'd spent her life being told she didn't belong. Today, I leave as a woman who knows no place is beyond reach if we dare to imagine ourselves there." She reached for Elijah's hand, then extended her other hand toward the staff. "To everyone who made this house a home, thank you. The honor was ours." The applause followed them all the way to Marine One, where they turned for one last look at the White House before boarding. Private citizens. The Princeton house was a far cry from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, a cozy colonial with a wraparound porch and an actual backyard. Jamal immediately claimed the treehouse, while Elijah got hopelessly tangled in garden hoses trying to water the flower beds. Amara watched from the kitchen window, sipping coffee from an actual mug instead of fine china. No staff, no schedules, just them. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert about the new first family settling in. She swiped it away, only for another message to pop up. This one from Danica Hayes. Asterisk saw your farewell speech. You proved me wrong in the best way. Wishing you all the happiness. Asterisk. Amara stared at the screen, surprised by the warmth that bloomed in her chest. She typed back. Asterisk thank you. That means more than you know. Asterisk. Elijah stumbled through the back door, dripping wet from the hose mishap. Remind me why we thought gardening was a good idea? Amara laughed, tossing him a towel. Because we're normal people now. Normal people do yard work. Elijah caught her around the waist, pulling her close despite his damp clothes. Remind me what normal is again? Amara kissed him, slow and sweet. We'll figure it out together. Epilogue. 5 years later. The auditorium at Crestwood High buzzed with anticipation. Amara adjusted the microphone as she looked out at the sea of students. So many faces that reminded her of herself at that age. Thank you for that introduction, she began, smiling at the nervous sophomore who'd read her lengthy bio. But before we talk about my work at the Department of Education, or my new book, I want to tell you a story about this very school. She spun the tale with practiced ease. The new girl, the bullies, the secret that changed everything. The students leaned forward, captivated. A lot of people will tell you where you belong, Amara concluded. Don't believe them. The only person who gets to decide your worth is you. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as she signed books in the library, a shy girl approached, her curls pulled back in a familiar style. You're the reason I applied to Princeton, the girl confessed, clutching her copy of Amara's memoir. Amara's throat tightened. She inscribed the title page with care. For Jordan, the first of many great things to come. That evening, as she and Elijah walked hand in hand through their Princeton neighborhood, the sunset painting the sky in familiar golds and pinks, Amara realized she'd come full circle. The girl who once hid in the back of classrooms now shaped them. The woman who'd been told she didn't belong had rewritten the rules. And the love that started as a secret had become her greatest strength. Elijah squeezed her hand. What's that smile for? Amara gazed up at him, her heart full. Just thinking how lucky we are. The leaves crunched beneath their feet as they turned toward home, toward the next chapter. toward whatever adventures awaited. Together,